Good morning, everyone. My name's Jan Scott. Welcome to another talk with Father Terry Ryan here on this beautiful but smoky Saturday morning. We're in Boulder, Colorado. Father Ryan is joining us from Snowmass, Colorado at the St. Benedict's Monastery. Father Terry Ryan's talk on mental and contemplative prayer it'll be this talk this morning. This is in a series of talks he has given over the United States in the past years. Later, Jeff, our HR assistant, Jeff is helping this morning with the technology on Zoom. We'll put up the link to YouTube. Father Ryan has a YouTube account where you can either see or listen to almost all of his talks. And today's will be up there too. And this one will actually have the speaker view. So when he's talking, you'll just see him and it won't look like the Brady Bunch, which some of the others did look like. All right, that was a joke. Anyways, the way this morning will go is first, Father Ryan will talk for about 45 minutes. Then there will be a 5 to 10 minute break. And then we'll come back from the break for questions and answers. So you might think of your questions as we go along this morning and write them down. You can just shout them out. Don't be shy. You can wave your hand or shout them out, or you can type them in chat. Chat is the part that's over here on the right-hand side. And then after that, there'll be a 20-minute meditation period that Father Ryan will lead us all in. Okay, now some of the business here. You can make an offering to Father Ryan through Venmo or by mailing him a check. Okay, so who has Venmo? Raise your hand if you have Venmo. Or if you don't, and you'd like to learn how to use Venmo, if you just type in chat, I'd like to learn how to use Venmo, either Jeff or myself will walk you through it in chat. So there is his Venmo account, Terry-Ryan-25. So when I use my Venmo account, I go to my Venmo account, which is Jan-Scott, and then it goes, do you want to make a contribution? And I go, yes, and then I just type in $50, blunk, and it takes it right out of my bank account. Pretty simple, easy breezy. Or you can mail a check if you want to Father Terry Ryan at St. Benedict's Monastery, 1012 Monastery Road, Snowmass, Colorado, 81654. So you can do that. Now the other thing too is if you click on the right-hand side, you can save chat and save all of this information. Or as we're talking, if you have a pen and a piece of paper, you can then write it all down right here, right now, while we're kind of going through this. Let's see. Then the other thing, I have to come back up here, get with you guys. The other thing you can do is if you keep yourself, I guess Jeff will mute you while Father Ryan is talking. And then who's new to his talks? Anybody here brand new? So everyone's been to his talks before? Good. All right. And then if you want to, you can also add the city you're from on your name, or if you scroll over your name where it says more, it says change name. So that's always pretty good. So without further ado, I will now introduce Father Terry Ryan.
Well, good morning. Good morning. It's a morning where I am, and it's 9 a.m. here in the mountains. I know the SOS people on the East Coast, it's 11. So I'll be talking when they start getting hungry at lunch. The background of this talk is, if you want to chase after somebody who I think wrote quite well, is Vitalis Lehodey, Lehodey. He was a Carmelite monk, and he was writing in the late 19th, early 20th century. about what he called mental prayer versus contemplative prayer. And I'm going to do a lot on this mental prayer, which is really what most of us are doing, because mental prayer is something we can do. It's not the gift of contemplative prayer that comes from God. Now, so mental prayer, you could see it in, say, if you were reading your scriptures, say a sutra, or the Vedanta, or the Bible, and you were reading your scriptures and sort of beginning to think about it and ponder it and see how you're moved by it, since in my tradition, the Bible is God speaking to us. It's kind of a knock on the door of contemplation. You don't open the door to contemplative practice. That is something God does, but you can knock on the door. So there's things that we do to bring us, with the help of God or with our practice, to get to this contemplative prayer. So a lot of people say that just when we're beginning to learn to pray as children, it says, oh, well, just talk to God, ask God for stuff, say hello to God. And a lot of us think, well, that's prayer. But somebody like Lehodey might say, is it really? Because, and many others, prayer is supposed to be a dialogue. Well, we know if we're talking, we assume the other person is listening, but you don't know that. And if we're doing all the talking, is that really a dialogue? And in prayer, where we're always asking God stuff, or it's sort of, that kind of prayer is the prayer of, Lord, listen, your servant is talking, that's the opposite of what it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be listening. So, but the important thing about talking to God in prayer is it doesn't change us. If you get what you want, then you just go about your life as you were before. You say a thank you, and because we're somewhat self-imploded. We're a lot about ourselves. And if you don't get what you want, you just sort of give up on God. Either way, you're not particularly changed. So what we would like to develop is more of a prayer of, say, gratitude, which could lead to love. We know that. And gratitude comes from being more open instead of asking for something. So much gratitude, which I try to practice when I wake up in the morning, sort of prepare myself for prayer of the heart, if you will. Prayer of the heart is really where mental prayer takes over, where I stop thinking and talking, and from some deeper place in me, I'm connecting to this power, this source, this energy. And so when I wake up in the morning, I don't ask for things. I thank God that I'm alive, that I have health, and other things that I have, for which I'm very grateful. And I try to remember those things and not take them for granted. So I start out with gratitude. And then I might begin to ask for some things, but not for myself. Or if I ask for myself, that it will benefit others. I'm trying to move in a direction that takes me away from myself. I mean, I'm living here in Colorado. I'm praying for the life and property and health of people in California. Is getting me away from myself and concerned about others. And that kind of a prayer of gratitude and asking for others prepares me for a day in which I don't pay a lot of attention to myself. And it moves me away from asking for things for me. And it'll get me moving to this mental prayer, this deeper prayer that uses neither words nor formulas. It'll move me in that direction. But right now it is words. And but it's a step up from just asking God for stuff for me. Now, something that I think can be very helpful to us in this kind of moving into the depths of prayer is a routine. Why do we need a routine? And let me explain what it is. I'd start with the monastery, for instance, the Benedictine rule, which of course is not your rule, But the Benedictine rule is a routine. And the routine is something that holds the day together. So I don't have to spend a lot of time and energy sort of reconstructing or constructing my day. And that allows me to have more energy and time for the interior journey. So the Benedictine rule itself is not to change me, but rather to give me a structure so that I can grow and be not a Benedictine monk or a Trappist monk, but the best me that I can be in the monastery. So there's no cookie cutter monks. There's just individuals who in the monastic way are becoming the best that they can be because they don't pay a lot of attention to normal things. For instance, we eat at a certain time. We don't get up and decide when we're going to have lunch. We say certain prayers at a certain time. We don't decide whether we'll have prayers and what kind of prayers. We show up and we do certain prayers that are just given. We sing certain psalms that are just given. So think of yourself now, translate this into your own family structure, or your own life structure if you live alone. I think it's very valuable to have a structure to your life so that when you wake up, there's certain things you do on a daily basis that are routines. You don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. You don't get up and say, let's see, will I go shopping for groceries? Because your routine is you shop on Mondays for groceries. Now, what you're looking for is to free up energy so you can devote it to the interior journey. Think of yourself on a vacation, a tour. You're going on a tour, and you're the one deciding what you're going to do each day. Tell me how much you prayed on that tour. A lot of people go on a vacation, they say, I didn't really do my regular prayers. It's because all your energy was used up trying to figure out when we're going to eat, where we're going to go, what we're going to see, who's going to do this, who's going to do what. So a routine in your life will allow you to have more energy for the interior journey. And so that's why I think structure is important. And I find it very helpful here. And also when you have this energy, it will help to counter the times when you just become weary. In my tradition, we call it weariness of God. We just got tired of God. But what we really are is we're tired from our day, just negotiating what's going to happen next in our day. I mean, parents who have children in school now, I mean, say your child is going to a school at this time, and there's a lot of, when do I pick you up? And do I pick you up this time, this day, this time, that day? Think of all the energy that goes into that. And one of the things about school is to develop a structure so that you can learn. The student doesn't have to figure out what they're going to do every minute. It's given to them for the purpose of learning. So I think structure becomes kind of important. And if the child is not in school, if you have a child and the child's at home, that there is some structure so that they don't get up each morning and say, well, let's see, when will I do my arithmetic? Well, let's think about that. Before you know it, they just get exhausted from trying to figure out what they're going to do instead of actually doing it. So I think it's the same way with prayer. And it detaches us from just general sluggishness that we get from when we're trying to figure out our day. Because in a routine, there's the next thing. So you don't really get into just laziness or sluggishness because there's the next thing in your routine. And that's what makes it work, I think. So now into the prayer itself. I think a prayer that gives glory to God, for instance, in my tradition, is to make us better people. So if it's not for negotiation. And say you don't have a particular God in your life, but what about giving glory to creation, to the day? Now, you can say, well, there's forest fires going on everywhere. And the question is, can we see something beautiful in the midst of this chaos over which we have not much control? Can we find those things? Well, if you've got some energy and you're practicing some daily routine, you might be able to see something beautiful. I find it when I'm out walking, for instance. I try to do early morning walk up here. Not too early, but early enough that fits into the overall structure. And what I notice is there's always a flower blooming. Wildflowers, we're not planting flowers. And what look like just a weed or just a silly piece of grass or something, all of a sudden blooms and flowers. And so I've got this smoke up above me, and yet I have this flower to look at and say, oh, thank you for this. Say thank you to the flower. If you have nothing else to say thank you to. What does it do? It takes you out of yourself. We're trying to get out of ourselves, out of self-mumbling, complaining, all this stuff about me, which often brings up gossip about others. Either we talk it or we think it, or we say it to ourselves, those kinds of things, all of which takes us away from the interior journey. So I think part of the preparation for this deeper prayer also is what is often referred to in traditions, such as the Carmelite, is the school of humility. And humility is not humiliation, but humility. Well, the school of humility requires some daily examination of conscience. Everybody in 12-step programs knows this, to make a daily examination of conscience. At the end of the day, maybe at the beginning of the day, I ask that I avoid some of my faults that seem to have some energy in my life. And at the end of the day, I look at, well, how did I do? What did I do that was really good? What did I do that wasn't so good? And it's to keep us humble. That is, to recognize that we need some help. This daily examination of conscience looks at our weaknesses, our shortcomings. And that even becomes part of the remedy. How is that? Well, if you keep seeming stuff you don't want to do that you think gets in the way of your spiritual growth and you do it anyway, you realize there's a certain sense of powerlessness. And one of the reasons that the reason that a lot of us get involved in a spiritual practice is because we feel kind of powerless. I don't mean just powerless over lightning and forest fires. I mean powerless over our own ways of doing things, our habits. They get formed, and when they're formed, we can't seem to unform them given our own will. We need a power greater than ourselves. In my tradition, I would call this God. But you need some energy, some force. So it's a little bit different. Examining our conscience to come to the conclusion that we're powerless is a lot different than, in my tradition, what people do is they have something called a sacrament of penance. They go to confession. And I'm the guy who listens to a lot of these as the priest, and they confess the same old. And I sometimes get the impression they think by confessing it, they won't do it anymore. And they come back a week or a month or 3 months later, and it's the same old. In other words, they haven't recognized that they can't change just because they know it. They know they have a problem. Or they can't change it. They think they can change it by just saying it, confessing it. That doesn't change us. You've got to have a deeper spiritual life that surrenders a bit of your power. And the way we surrender a bit of our power is by learning to sit in silence and stillness with this power greater than ourselves, this force, this energy, which then will work on our life as we rest in this prayer to begin to change us in ways that we don't even quite know how it's happening. But what we do see is the results. We begin to become better people. And that is not based upon a prayer feeling good. A lot of people will say, well, I don't feel so good in my prayer. And I said, but is your life changing? Are you still doing the same silly bad habits you used to do. They're saying destructive things. I say, no, I'm starting to change your life. So then don't worry about whether the prayer is boring or tedious. I said, just do it. And there's something working inside of you. But you have to start out with examination of conscience and recognize that you can't change on your own. And so this deeper prayer of just opening ourselves to God so that we'll become better people is what is called by people like Lehodey the grave of pride. Not pride in good pride that I'm basically loved or a good person, but pride, false pride. I'm better than you. I'm better than, I should be better. I should be better. That's false. I should be. Why should you be better? You are who you are. And it's a big ego thing to think that with your own energy, you're going to become better. So it's the grave of pride to recognize our shortcomings. And this is daily examination of conscience. It doesn't have to press us. It just has to be the energy that gets us to pray. And it becomes part of our overall daily routine. We just do it. That's why in the 12-step programs, people are told to do certain things. Do these 12 things in the course of your day, and you're going to become a better person. And there's a lot of people say, yeah, it actually did work. So I think that this transformation from prayer is just asking God for stuff, foxhole prayers, for instance, prayers that come out of fear, and moving to this deeper prayer of the heart, where you're just sitting in a silence, a stillness, not paying attention to thoughts, not saying words, and you just sense that something deeper in you is at work. That's called the prayer of the heart. And that's what will begin to transform you. So transformation is part of transformation will come about because we're praying when we are disinclined. That's part of transformation. You'll know you're transformed because now you're doing it when you don't want to do it. That's why structure is important, because you don't wait around till you want to do something. Prayer is not like being on a tour or a holiday. It's to become daily. It has to be done every day. And that means you don't wait around till you want to do it. And that's what I like about this Benedictine tradition that is practiced at this Trappist monastery in Snowmass. Is I don't wait around till I'm going to do certain things. They're scheduled. That's when we do them. And so if you're starting to pray when you don't feel like it, when it's going against your will, which is a good thing to go against if you're having a lot of problems with yourself, that's part of transformation. And it's really better to pray then when you're enthusiastic. This brings up another thought. We have a retreat house up here, all right? And people come up on retreat. And another thing about structure. So they come up on retreat, they maybe live chaotic lives, and they come up here for, say, 7 or 10 days. And what's given is a schedule. They're given a schedule when they come up on these group retreats. And they're going to do certain things at certain times of the day. They already know that when they come. They already agree to it. And one of the things that allows them the energy for that is they don't worry about a lot of other things. Someone else is cooking the meal. Someone else is going to clean their room. Somebody else made their bed for them. Someone else put towels in their room. They have no household tasks to worry about. And they finish these 7 to 10 days, these contemplative outreach retreats, for instance, these centering prayer retreats, we call them. And they get to the end, oh, I feel so spiritual. I feel so wonderful. I'm so close to God. Oh, I'm going to go home and just continue to do this. They come back the next year and say, I don't know, it all fell apart. They have no structure. So in structure, it just becomes so important. And that's why you tend to pray better when you're on retreats and not so good when you have no structure in your life. So again, structure. So, but difficulty when you're in your daily, everyday life. People say, I'm a lay person. I'm not a monk. I'm a parent. I got a job. I got a spouse. I got a partner. And so on like that. That's impossible. Well, think of it this way. It's difficult. Maybe that's something you should write down and put next to your bed when you wake up in the morning. Transfer the word impossible to difficult. Difficult doesn't mean impossible, but it does mean difficult. So at least you recognize that something's not going to be easy, but you don't give up. And again, it's asking for a higher power and energy, a source, a God, or a right path is what Buddha speaks of, the right path. And it's the right path for you. I mean, Buddhism has kind of an overall structure, the Four Noble Truths and so on and so forth, Eightfold Path, but you're in it and becoming the best you. But they give you a structure so you can do these kinds of things. That's the great wisdom of these traditions. So difficult does not mean impossible. Keep in mind one of the big difficulties is not the many things you have to do during the day. It's the orchestra of your mind that looks at the many things that you say you have to do during the day, or maybe have to do during the day. And the orchestra of your mind is playing. Think of an orchestra playing all these different instruments and all trying to play together, or maybe in some cacophony of noise. And that's what's going on. That's your mind when it's not quieted, when it's not stilled, when it only prays when you want something, or when you're scared or worried. So the mind is an orchestra of thoughts. It is always going to be an orchestra of thoughts. What we need to learn to do is to let go of paying attention to the orchestra of thoughts, so that we can have a little bit of quiet and stillness in our life. So sometimes when we said it's impossible to pray, it's only because we haven't found a way or a method to let go of focusing on that orchestra of thoughts. So you need a little bit of discipline. And that's what a method does. When you receive a method from somebody, a way, in some place, it's a matter of sitting. It's a way when you close your eyes, open your eyes, what you look at. In my tradition, it might be a certain word you say that you might say over and over a few times, like a mantra. The method is to deal with this orchestra of thoughts so that you can become a little bit detached from them, a little bit of letting go of the play. They'll still play on, but they don't become the focus of you. They don't suck your energy in the time that you're supposedly trying to pray. And then you can begin to do some of these things as you walk through your day. In my tradition, for instance, you'll say a certain prayer. In maybe the Hindu tradition, Om Mani Padme Om. And you find yourself, instead of just fretting about something, Om Mani, or Om. Or my tradition, it would be Jesus, or Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, or things like that. They just begin to permeate your day. And if you can become a little bit more quiet within during your activities, and that's what the Benedictine tradition is trying to help us to do, to become more quiet in the manual labor or the works that we do, so we fret less. Then the interior prayer that you practice specifically in your sitting for 20 minutes, half hour, an hour, whatever you do, it's easier to segue into that. It's easier to get into the prayer of the heart, which is what Lehodey would call mental prayer, sort of the knocking at the door of contemplation. And what we need to do is something he calls taciturn silence. What's taciturn silence? It's learning how to just be with you. And that's one of the reasons we stay busy, I think. We don't want to be with us, in a sense. And when we start thinking about things, it's often about other out there things, real or imaginary. We have just trouble being with ourselves. And I often say, why would anybody else want to be with me if I don't want to be with me? So mumbling is one of the ways that we are with ourselves. So sometimes we just stay busy because we have a little trouble just being quiet and still with me. And that's one of the reasons people maybe talk a lot. And in this tradition of the Benedictine rule up here, one of the things that is said is unnecessary talking. Why do we do unnecessary talking? Gossip would be unnecessary talking. Saying something just to get a laugh. Well, that's really pretty egocentric. Maybe the guy you're trying to get a laugh from would like to be still and quiet. He's not interested in your joke or your view. And this kind of silence challenges the idea that God's not enough. I can't be still and silent and just be with my power or energy or source because it's just not enough. I got to be talking. But think of silence, not talking silence. I don't mean silence in terms of a stillness within. That comes a little later. Just during the day, practicing a little bit of silence when the option is to talk, but you don't have to talk. That kind of silence is the parent of prayer. The parent of prayer. That kind of silence engenders, gives birth to a deeper prayer down the road. Being silent a little bit during their daytime stuff may allow you to be a little bit more easily silent within, which is not, now going through the day, you're not talking, but maybe your mind's thinking, but you're practicing some not talking. Allows you, when you go deeper, when you try to sit in your actual meditative prayer, you find it a little bit easier to get into a deeper silence, which is a silence of not paying attention to your thoughts. So when you're going through the day, you may be really attentive to you. You notice you're thinking about this gossiping thing, this judgment thing about another, this joke that you can tell somebody else, or this put down of somebody, and you don't say it. That is preparing you for silence when you actually do your meditation, because you've learned to say no to your thoughts. You notice them, you're paying attention, but you're saying no. Now in the deeper prayer, it's a little bit easier to not pay attention to those thoughts. So that's why I think this taciturn silence is, you can write that down, it's a quote, okay? So it's the silence of the tongue. It's a start. Now, the memory, the imagination, they're still going on. They prattle on, but you are not letting them control you. So some people say, I can't get over gossip. Well, I just gave you a way to get over gossip. Just practice, even if you do it once a week in the beginning, it's a start. And eventually you may get to the place where it's completely absent from your life. And you don't even think about it. You're not even attracted to doing it. And it used to be an addiction. It was an actual addiction, gossip. And now you don't even think about it. Well, that can take a little bit of time and energy and effort and a little step work, if you will. So the silence that we practice now in the prayer is for God, not for fantasies. Now, if you can practice in the prayer a little bit of not paying attention to your thoughts, when you go through your ordinary day, what you're going to find, especially if you tend to go into fantasy just to pass the time, a lot of people do this when they're jogging. Well, what are you going to do? And they just think about winning the Olympics. Certainly not me, but, other people. You find yourself catching yourself when you're out there doing your exercise, for this example. You say, well, why am I'm not even in me. I'm not, and you just cut that off. You say, I'm not going to think about that. And then you notice the flower, or you notice something else that just sort of attracts you to the beauty of the world around you, makes it a better run or a better walk or whatever it is you're doing. So we learn with the prayer and then our daily life to begin to silence ourselves. And the methods that we practice in prayer for silence is going to help us to practice a deeper stillness just in our daily life. So, in other words, you begin to deal with problems and issues, or what we call vices or bad habits, before you get into virtues. You know, a lot of people say, I want to be a kinder person. So you're not kind. You're vicious and cruel. Well, deal with vicious and cruel first, and then kindness will start coming later. You got to make space for kindness by getting rid of vicious and cruel, which is the examination of conscience. That's why you're doing those kinds of things. So some people say, you're not going to arrive into loving union all of a sudden. But here's another notion as I think of it. One of the things that we can use as we begin to practice a little bit of prayer of silence and solitude, trying to do it, is little meditation books, little guides. And they can be very helpful of segueing us, especially if you have the time. And one of the nice things about the monastery is we do have a little bit more time for prayer, I think. And so I have these meditation books, but you will begin to find as you deepen your prayer, what does deepen mean? You find it a little bit more easier to ignore your thoughts. You find it a little bit easier to just be still and not, twitchy. Don't then go to your books. Was that the routine? Some routines at some point are available, but you don't need them. At that moment, you don't need the routines. So the routines or methods, if you will, that was so important when you got started, at some point, and this will show you that you are moving in a transformative direction, you will have days or prayer times when you really don't need those little meditation books. And I encourage people to use them if they're helpful, but to ignore them if they find themselves. I just sometimes find myself sitting down and I'm there. I'm right here now. And I think that was Ram Dass, be here now. And so I don't need a book. Why do I want to go to a book? It's taking me away from that stillness and that quiet, that sense of being centered and open. In other words, I have a sense that I sat down, I knocked, and the door got open, and I'm in. Leave the books outside. When you leave, they'll still be there. So what are some of the failures in mental prayer? If I can go into this for a bit. Well, one of the things that is a failure to get into this deeper place is no patience. We lack patience. So if you're going to ask for something, ask for patience. And early on, our wills are very strong to go in any direction but transformation. So the will is a little bit broken when it comes to developing a deeper spiritual life. It's not the way to go. You don't wait around for your willpower. People go into recovery programs. No, they have a broken will. They're there out of desperation. They didn't sit up and say, well, let's see, today I think I'll be sober. Oh, I don't know, let's think about that. No, they're desperate. They're on the way out. And so they show up and nobody says, oh, let's work on willpower. No, work on structure, which is steps. So don't wait around for your will to jump in. That's going to be later. We hasten to quit our prayers. That's another reason we stop, because we want to do more active things like check our cell phones. So I have a cell phone in my room. Fortunately, we have our bandwidth is not very good, and so I can't get any phone calls. That helps. And I just keep it plugged in and sits there on the side, but I don't pay attention to it. Maybe at the end of the day I might look, but I'm not here to be focused on communications like that. So another thing that keeps us, that fails in the direction of a deeper prayer is we expect to go from the tumult of our unstructured day directly into some deep place. Well, in a miracle, that can happen, but generally that's not going to be it. So again, structure so that you are allowed to segue more easily. So we get up at a certain time most days. Now, there'll be some times when you went out to the theater. Well, not now. With COVID, you're going to no theaters. So it's a little bit easier to go to bed at a certain time and easier to get up at a certain time. I don't know any runners that get up in the morning and decide where they're going to run in the morning or the afternoon. Unless there's something very unusual, like a rainstorm in the morning. But generally, they figured out when they're going to run. They figured out what they're going to do, and so they don't spend a lot of energy sitting around thinking about it. And sometimes the will is the last thing you want to cooperate. It may not be ready to cooperate with you. So you can't go from tumult to deep prayer all at once. That's why you have methods. Methods are for transitions. When you don't need a transition, you don't need a method. So if your daily life is becoming a little bit more silent and still, probably with the help of structure, you will find it easier to enter into the prayer, which is why many people like to pray in the morning after getting out of bed. Although some will find it better to pray in the evening. They're not morning people. So methods are for transition. And Lehodey would say that's not really prayer. Centering prayer, contemplative outreach would think their method is also prayer. Whatever. And another thing that's really, I think, gets in the way is sort of the failure to enter more deeply is to, and I've really been talking about this, to confine our prayer to one small section of the day and then to think no more about it. That means maybe we're too busy with self. We hope that this, what I've been talking about, if we have some structure, that the prayer we're doing, which is what I like to do, I think it's good to do something in the morning to sort of give us some focus for our day, so that we are thinking about it when we're doing little small prayers during the day. We're sitting around waiting. You're waiting to get through the line at the grocery store where there's not enough clerks and the lines are long, and you mumble and you complain and you think God hates you and blah, blah, blah. And you just, instead, you've learned to just be a little bit quiet and still. The line's not going to go any faster because you're mumbling and complaining and having a miserable time. So you might as well just make it a time of your little quiet prayer, your little over and over again short prayer, or just praying for the people in the store, if nothing else. Just get out of you is basically what we're trying to do. Get out of yourself. And structure is to take us out of ourselves. Another thing that gets us is boredom. I've said this many times. Boredom makes us give up. Prayer's not for entertainment. Prayer's not Netflix or Hulu. Prayer is for transformation. And if you're going to become all you're supposed to be, the best you're going to have to go through rough times. Again, I'll use the running example. No one gets fit by just running when it feels good. They get really fit and become the best runner they can be when they do it when it's hard. And I don't mean they do it when they're injured, because that would be silly too, but when it's hard, or you do a hard workout and you might say, I don't want to do this workout. I hate this workout. Well, that's your will. And that's your sort of self-centered. And you do it anyway. And then later say, I'm so glad I did that. I feel so much better now. Accomplishment. So you pray because you decided to pray, not because you wait around till you think it's going to be fun. It may be, but you don't know that. It's a good prayer, not because you feel good, but if it brings you to renounce ourselves and bear better with other people. And that's what the rule of Benedict tries to do. He even says that in the rule, is to renounce ourselves so that we can bear better with others. And we don't mean bear better with others who are beating us over the head with a whip. I mean, just bear with the others who are full of their own selves. And we put up with them. We even love them. I mean, that's real transformation. In my tradition, that would be becoming like Christ. I think of the Buddha. And the Buddha's attitude towards all kinds of people, the compassion of Buddha, the eightfold path. I think part of that is saying the right words. Sometimes it's no words, and other times it's words of kindness and love, not because the other person is wonderful, because they may be a jerk. You've just learned how to respond differently. That's part of your own transformation, I think. So it's good feeling prayer is really barren. And people say, I felt so good in my prayer. It's really barren if it leaves us full of ourselves. I felt so good in my prayer. Okay, let's see how that goes during the day. You get up from your feeling good in prayer, and the next thing you know, you're mumbling about the failures of another person, about how terrible the day is, about how much smoke is in the sky. And why doesn't God fix up the world? But in my prayer, I was feeling pretty good. So it's still full of me. Enjoyment is nice. It'd be nice to have a good time in prayer, but it's not the goal. The goal is transformation, becoming all that I'm supposed to be through the tough times. And if you do have dryness and boredom, in my tradition, we would say maybe God wants us to have that. Maybe it's part of the path. God wants to humble us. Remind us that this prayer is not all me, hardly me. Showing up is me, doing my method is me, and then God kind of takes over. So I think people know that in whatever tradition, if they sit in Zazen, something, they do that, and then something else happens over a period of time. So dryness may be just part of the path. And I have found nobody that has said they never had a moment of dryness. I found people that said I was bored and I stopped. But it's like the runner, I stopped because there was no more fun. I said, okay, you didn't get in shape in that 3 weeks. Or you join the gym. You know how many people join gyms and then go 2 or 3 times? How much exercise equipment is on eBay? You know, you buy this stuff, you think you got to use it. Hey, it wasn't fun. I had 2 or 3 times. But heck with that. Yeah. Well, we got a lot of people pray that way too. So yeah, it's dry, it's boring sometimes. Yeah, it's just life, the interior life as well as the exterior life. I mean, if you got a spouse, there's going to be dry and boring times. It's just the way it is. So really, progress is going to have a bit of humility. You're going to accept that you're not in control of this prayer, and you got to let go if you're trying to control it. Feel good. You just got to let go of that. So we need to detach from ourselves and our need for consolations. People say, I want to feel good in my prayer. It's not going to always happen. There's a spiritual diet, and the spiritual diet comes from not always getting the food that you say you want. It's like a little bit like saying, I want my sugar. Transformation, like anything else, not always, sugar is not too good for you, though it tastes good. So we have to learn to love God in desolation, love God when it's difficult, just like we learn to love other people. So again, you need something that holds you together, some sort of structure that holds you together. It's really a path in which we die to self. Meditation, thinking about something in scripture is a sort of prayer, but not really. It's more thinking about, it's an introduction to this deeper prayer, let's say, because it's we're thinking about something that we read in a scripture. We're pondering it. And we're withdrawing our thoughts from earthly things, if you will. And you can use something that can help you in this. Sometimes people say, well, I look at a piece of scripture, and sometimes it's the ambience of the room that can help you. In my tradition, people have statues and holy cards that they just have around, some maybe even hold in their hand, that sometimes helps them to get more focused. So it can just be the ambience of the room. It's not so chaotic to you. So they can be helpful. And after reflection on a piece of scripture, we might just sort of begin to examine ourselves and see how we are in relation to what we just read. See what arises from it. Sometimes when I read, I examine myself and I say, oh, I'm kind of sorry that I'm not better, not more loving, not more gracious, no gratitude, no humility. Or, oh, here's where I am making some progress. See you moving along. And the will, which was kind of weak in the beginning, the will begin to get in shape, if you will. If you will, the will, you'll want to do this more often than less often. And I think that's part of the habit. We want to do it more often than less often, and we're not too worried about the results. That is how it's going to go during the time. And that's when the heart is beginning to get involved. It's a little bit easier to get into this prayer. And meditation really is therefore not about knowing things. It's not about acquiring knowledge. In the 12-step program, you acquire a lot of knowledge in the first 5 steps, but you're not really a better person. You're not drinking, but you haven't really become transformed. There's a lot of action that still has to go. So our meditation is not just for knowing things. In my tradition, there'll be people who memorize scripture and they'll quote it to you. But that doesn't mean they're better people. They might be very judgmental people. They might be better people, but they could be very judgmental people, very unkind people, very narrow-minded people. But they memorize scripture. So meditation is not about knowledge, except knowledge of myself and what needs to still be done in me. And we might have a sentiment, a feeling, such as, but it doesn't have any value unless it leads to action. I feel pretty good. And so you see this in 12-step programs. People have a good feeling, and what's the action that's going to come from that? I felt good. I went to a meeting. I feel good. And so there's always what action is going to come from this that is going to continue to build. You showed up, what's going to come next? So just because you have a good feeling doesn't mean that you're really going to do something. It doesn't mean you may want to do something. It doesn't mean you're going to do it. So feelings aren't going to change you. That's not part of transformation. It's nice, it's a gift, but it's not going to transform you. It may be just a mere emotion and it passes. So we don't want spiritual gluttony, seeking prayer only to feel good. I don't feel good, I'll try another method. So, okay, you meet people says, well, I'm thinking of becoming a Christian. I tried Buddhism, then I went to Hinduism, and then I went to TM, and then I read Marianne Williamson, and well, I don't know. What do you guys got? The chances of that person really getting transformed through the Christian path is probably very, very low, because something's getting in the way, and it could be just spiritual gluttony, or having a goal of feeling good. So avoid those kind of goals. You may have consolation, you may have desolation. You just keep coming back. It's all about becoming a better person, a better me. It's to reform me and not to reform the world around me. So we learn to accept other people because we can't really change them. We're working on changing me. So in the monastery, I'm not working on changing other monks. If I am, I got a big problem. this sense of, I want to love God. All this work goes before that deeper love of God, because love is letting go of self. And a lot of people pray to get feeling better. You got to be, you have to have trustful humility, if you will. It uproots self-sufficiency. Trusting humility, trusting this process that is a power that is not you, but that you can access. And we don't want to be attached to our miseries. And if we feel powerless, it can actually be a way to let go of our misery. Well, I can't get over this left to my own devices. I'm going to find something that has a power I don't have, which is, and so then you find it, you got to persevere. In recovery programs, is meetings, steps, helping others, so on and so, da. So making resolutions doesn't do anything. I know so many people who said they stopped. I'm stopping this bad habit forever. And the next week they do the same thing over again. Resolutions are no good. And resolutions without this deeper prayer go nowhere. It's like, get me out of this foxhole, God, and I promise I will change. All this now draws us to a simpler prayer. The mind is going to begin to quiet down, and the heart can now speak. This is called heart prayer. I talked about this with Cynthia Bourgeau's stuff, a previous Zoom. The prayer of the heart. And rather than try to figure out what it is, it'll come. Some call it affective prayer. It's like a simple look. No longer are you paying attention to your thoughts. No longer do you find you need words. Some call it an active contemplation. I read some of Teresa of Avila. You'll see some of this. The heart now is conversing in what Teresa's saying, and the Carmelite tradition, and much of my tradition, is the heart is conversing with God. And you don't have to understand it. You can feel it. You can sense something, a kind of stillness, a quiet, a peacefulness. You feel no need to speak. You don't find any thought that's going to make it any amount of thoughts. Focusing on thinking about it just sort of takes you drifting away into you. All your thoughts are you. So the heart is conversing with God. It's the illuminative way. There's three ways with Teresa. The first way is purgative. That's what you're doing with examination of conscience and all the other things I'm talking about. Now it's the illuminative. It's a light coming here. You're drawn to loving. You're drawn to it. You don't make a decision. A lot of people make a decision early on that you don't follow through. I'd like to love God, or I'd like to be a Buddha. I'd like to be a bodhisattva. Well, it's nice, but what about the work? So you're drawn to loving and being united with this power. And no longer are you engendering thoughts about what it is. You've let go about thoughts what it is. It's not a person. It's an energy. It's a power. It's not a noun. It's a verb. And you're drawn to it. And all the other things that you've been doing, this meditation on scripture and so on, so that's a lot for beginners. Now you're moving into something deeper. You're resting in love, not in knowledge. When you were doing your meditations on the scriptures, the sutras, the Vedanta, the Eightfold Path, whatever, the Lotus, that's it's a lot to do with knowledge. Now you're beneath that. You're deeper. The imagination is no longer involved. It's gone. It's jobless, if you will, at the moment. The will is silent. You're not sitting around saying, well, I think I'll do this. I think I'll stop. The will is silent, and love is beginning to take over. And this is why you probably need to have some sort of a electronic device that goes off to tell you that you've come to the end. Because when you're in this, it can go on quite a time. I have found myself in the monastery, because we don't have the gong when I'm doing a meditation, and I'm in the chapel. I don't have a little thing there, electronic device. And all of a sudden I look at my watch and, oh, where'd all that time go? Well, I was right here, but it went. So we're drawn to a prayer that gives ourselves over. And we don't worry about, was it pleasurable? That's a reflection. We're not reflecting at this point. And this kind of attraction comes from God. You can't create it. You can do the other things. This kind of attraction comes from God. You know that, and you're more detached, you're more humble because you know you didn't make it happen. And you didn't need a book. Okay, books are okay at the beginning, but you didn't need it now.
Terry, you asked me to remind you when we were at 45 minutes and we're beyond that.
I'll stop in a couple of seconds. Okay.
Yep.
We become more detached. Now, something, and I want to just put this point in here. This is Lehodey. He says, and I think it's part of the Carmelite tradition, don't deliberately suppress an affection. If you have an affection, that's a feeling, he says, don't deliberately suppress it. That's a little different than centering prayer, which says, pay no attention, attached to no thought, no feeling. So in each of these traditions, we see just a little bit of something different. But as Lehodey would say, it's okay if you have an affection. Oh, I feel such love for God. Let God move you beyond that, as God chooses. Maybe God wants to leave you in that. So you stay there until God invites you to something higher or deeper. Or as Lehodey says, don't try to outrun grace. Don't outrun grace. All right, I'll stop now.
We are now at our break time where we'll take a 5-minute or so break. And when we come back, Father Ryan will take your questions. So you might think of them and or write them down. You can also hear or see many of the teachings of Father Terry Ryan on his YouTube channel. Now, I've posted that in the right-hand side of your screen in chat. Everybody find chat okay? If you can't find chat, let me know. Just wave your hand. All right, so you can go there for that. Also, let's see, what else do we have here? Also, just another reminder on Terry's Venmo account is Terry-Ryan-25. If you have Venmo, does everybody have Venmo? Then you could just go, you do? Okay, you don't, or you do? Okay. Megan, do you have Venmo? Yeah, good, okay.
I do, thank you.
There's one person with Venmo. I have Venmo. Jeff, do you have Venmo? Yep, Jeff has Venmo, okay. And Venmo's, and if you don't know how to use Venmo or you want to know, just write to us in chat, or you can write to Jeff and or me, and he'll tell you how to hook your account up to it. Or you can send a check to Father Terry Ryan at St. Benedict's Monastery, 1012 Monastery Road, Snowmass, Colorado. And then when we come back, questions or comments, I don't know if we're going to have comments, but for Father Ryan, you can type them in chat to everyone, or you can wave your hand, or you can just shout it out. So we'll, I think, be back in about 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm taking a break. Something called Daily Reflections from Alcoholics Anonymous. I have found quite helpful. Well, you get that from AA. And Contemplative Outreach, which is the organization founded by Thomas Keating, also has little meditation books. And it's called contemplativeoutreach.org. And you can get in touch with them and they may give you something. There's just If you have no particular path, well, I'm not quite sure what you would do if you had no particular path. In Buddhist traditions, most of the meditation books will have a scripture reading, sutra, maybe something from Islam, and then a reflection on it. Those are the kinds of things that I like, little reflections on something. I don't like long readings. I want something that's kind of compact. I'm just using it to segue into quieting down. I'm not trying to do it to gain a lot of knowledge. I'm not in school. Okay, contemplative RHD, got that down. That's Thomas Keating stuff. What is Lehodey? Who is Lehodey? Okay, well, I guess I should spell it. Lehodey. Lehodey. His first name is Vitalis. Vitalis. Who is he? Who was he? He was a Carmelite. The Carmelite tradition would be Teresa of Avila, Teresa of Lisieux, John of the Cross. Give you a couple of famous examples. He was writing, lived in the late 19th, early 20th century. He's French. A book that he put out, this one I'll show you. Let's see. The Ways of Mental Prayer. Now, it has a whole section on contemplative prayer, which I'm going to do the next time that Jan and I get together on this sometime in September. We didn't do contemplative prayer. That's the second half. So the Ways of Mental Prayer. Well, he put this book out. He's French. So he puts the book out, early 20th century, before 1910. And the Irish put it into English, I think about, 1925 or something.
Who's the author of that book?
The author is Lehodey.
Okay.
He wrote it. No, it's not I don't particularly like books in which somebody's talking about somebody. I want to read what the guy or the woman wrote. Then I'll make my reflections. And that's what I talk to you about, my reflections on some of their wisdom. So that's when he lived. But it wasn't until 2015. I don't know what happened to the Irish one. It wasn't until 2015 to the Catholic Way Publishing Company. They're the ones who put this book out. I would just go on Amazon. I think that's probably where I found it. 2015, Catholic Way Publishing Company put it out. And then I discovered it. And I heard somebody talking about it. So who's Lehodey? And so I says, wow, this guy's got something. I read this book twice. And I really think he's on to a lot of very practical things. So I like, it doesn't do much good for a monk to write a book about that's just for monks. That doesn't help us. So I like people who have a tradition, a path, and translate it into things that we can use every day, which is what I'm trying to do for you. You're not going to become a Trappist monk or a Carmelite monk. You can be a third order like Ghislaine Miller, but third order is good. You need a lot of third order things. That means you practice their tradition, but you live your everyday life in the world. Okay. Well, it's Lehodey, not Oudie. Any case, go on to Amazon. Maybe you'll find something. Oh, there we go. Who is contemplative? Okay. Anything else before we do our 20 minutes? Now, I know some of you say, okay, this is when I leave. Well, give it a shot. Now, remember, you're sitting at home and you're relaxed. And if you find the 20 is too long, get up, take a stretch, get a cup of coffee or whatever. But at the end of 20 minutes, we'll come back. Then maybe you have some more questions. I have a few more things to talk about. Okay, we ready? We're gonna go 20 minutes. I'm keeping it on my cell.
I have a question. So what are we doing for 20 minutes?
We're sitting in silence.
Wow.
Okay, when you're ready, just open your eyes. So to come back into the room and put my cell phone aside. And I'm going to mention some other things and we'll wait, see if we have any more questions. But in September, the first Saturday of September, I'm going to be doing something. I'm reaching over here to get it. I'm going to be doing part 2 of something I did the first Saturday of August. That's run by a group out of Knoxville, Tennessee called the Seekers of Silence. And let me see if I can find, that's September 5th. And I'm going to do part 2 of Ruth Burroughs, who is also a Carmelite. And what I found to be so interesting about Ruth Burroughs was that she had a very dark time of it all. It wasn't very easy for her. Well, I got it someplace. Well, we'll just have to get it out. I know I have someplace, I have that number, because I wrote it down somewhere, but can't always find these things when you want them. Any case, it's that Saturday, September 6th. It's going to be run by the Spirit of Silence people, SOS group in Boulder. That'll be 9 a.m. Our time, Mountain time. And so you might want to, if you were listening to it the first time, you might want to check it out for the second time. Jan and I and Jeff will be doing a part 2 of Lehodey in mid-September. We'll decide on that afterwards. The part 2 is really the more contemplative. So we're going to build on what we did today. And you have the place to see it on YouTube if you missed it or want to listen again before we do it. Probably mid-September. Since I'm doing something on September 6th, it'll probably be about 20 something, maybe the 20th or something like that. So we'll do a part 2 of this and see how it segues into this deeper kind of prayer, which is beyond in this, what I was talking about, this mental prayer, as he calls it, is this heart connection to God, and we're aware of it, let's say. In contemplative prayer, we're taken deeper to we're not aware of the prayer at the moment that we're doing it. It's a complete gift from God, and what that might be all about, and what the results of that might be, the contemplative practice. So we'll be doing that, and let's see if we have any other questions. We're still waiting for that. I am going to just finish up with 1 or 2 things. If, let me see, if Ed Miller or somebody from Contemplative, from SOS is listening, you might send to us the Zoom number, which you have. I got it someplace. I don't know where it is. Okay, from Donna HRA, Knoxville, Tennessee. Need to request a link for the Seekers of Silence sessions using the link at the end of the following. Father Terry has agreed to do another Zoom presentation, 7/6 meeting. Yeah, I said that. Zoom not only has enabled us to have Father Terry, whose workshops are, well, let's see. Again, if you want to join the September meeting, please let me know. Oh, here it is. Jan, do you see that? Edgar Miller 25 at gmail.com. Everybody else sees that. So send the email to Edgar Miller 25 at gmail.com, and he'll send you the link. Oh, good. Yeah, they're going to run that one on September 6th. And one more thing I wanted to say is if SOS in Knoxville does not get tired of me. What I hope to do.
Terry,
Yes.
it's the 5th.
5th.
September 5.
Okay, well, we're not on calendar time here at the monastery. We're on Kairos time. September 5th, thank you. It's Saturday, first Saturday. Any case, future, I want to try and do something because they're a very ecumenical interfaith group, and I've got someone who's not Christian who I want to do, who reflects on their tradition, which I believe is Hindu. It's either Hindu or Tibetan, I have to look. They reflect their tradition. And then they look at Western Christianity, or the Christianity that came out of Europe and into the United States. I want to reflect on that. And so hopefully I'll be able to do that in the future with SOS.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned a lot of different traditions in your talk today. Have you tried practicing all of them? And why did you end up with the Catholic tradition or Christian tradition?
Yes. I fortunately in Boulder, way back in the 80s, Boulder, Colorado in the 80s, there was a lot of easy to get to and inviting traditions right down the street from me. So I went to the Hindu one, and they were going to sit for an hour. And the Swami was an Italian Catholic from Brooklyn who had transferred over to become a Swami of Hinduism. And got, it was a good conversation with him. And I did the sit and I'd read Hinduism. Then I went to Naropa. Of course, they were meeting with Zen practice. And then when I moved to San Francisco, they're not Zen. Boulder is a Tibetan. But in San Francisco was the Zen tradition. And I sat with them several times. And I just, after all that, I felt more comfortable for me. In other words, my spiritual growth seemed to work better with Thomas Keating, who I discovered in 1981, who was a Trappist, just died about 2 years ago. And I discovered Thomas Keating and learned quite a bit about the Christian contemplative practice, which had pretty much been put in the basement of Christianity after the Reformation. And I knew it existed. I knew about it. I was interested in it because it had been part of what I was brought up with, which was Roman Catholicism. So that kind of worked for me. I don't know what it would have been like had I not discovered Keating. And the method that he gave was centering prayer. And I think the key for me was it was so easy. I needed something very easy. It had 4 simple steps. And I liked that. And I felt that was a way to teach other people to get started. And he had a way of being able to talk to Buddhists and Hindus. So I felt I could stay in touch with those traditions somewhat. And I even went to classes at Colorado University on Hinduism and Buddhism. But I think religious studies departments are the death of practice because it's all intellectual. And I never had a sense that the teachers even believed in it personally. I don't know, maybe they did, or they had a practice. But I learned a lot about it. But I wasn't really drawn to practicing it. So that's how I ended up this way. So maybe we've come to the end, which is for those on the West Coast. Remember, I keep you in mind and in heart and in prayer for the fires. We have fires around here in Colorado as well. Knoxville's looking pretty good with just humidity and high temperatures. We got all this drama out here, but it's the way it is. So we thank you all for attending. Again, first Saturday of September, I'll be on at September 5th at 9 a.m. Get in touch with Ed Miller. And then Jan and I will plan something for mid-September on part 2 of Lehodey. And down the road, we'll do something on non-Christian reflections. Okay, well, thank you all for attending, and hope to see you down the road. I really like this kind of teaching because I have on my nice collar, but otherwise I have on gym shorts and my tennis shoes. This is great. I love it. Any case, thank you all. I miss the ones that I miss you that I don't see you, but this is the way it is for a while. So take care. And
Thank you, Terry. Thanks.
Thanks,
Terry.
Father Ryan. We love seeing you. Great job.
thank you.
Jeff,
Thank
Jeff,
you.
can we
Thank you.
unmute everybody?
Thank you, Terry.
Great day.
Have a great day. Bye, Terry.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
Oh, there they are.
Yeah, lots of this.
Yeah, Knoxville's a bit, Knoxville's here.
A lot of fans in Knoxville. I'm going back.
Good.
Hey,
Thanks so much.
Good to see you people from Colorado.
Yeah.
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 Oh,
Hey.
there's Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, how are you?
Okay.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks so much.
Mr. Lane. It looks like I'm talking to Knoxville here. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Why did I
Looking
never
forward to
speak?
seeing you again.
I should have stayed.
You're welcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Where is, what happened to Jan? Okay, Jan.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay,
Oh, there's this lane.
The endurance.
all right. Jan, I'll talk to you later about mid-September, okay?
Problem. Yeah. I
All
just.
right, take care. Thank you very much for
Oh,
running
yeah.
it.
No,
Jeff, thank you for running it.
you bet. No problem.
We'll see you
Thanks.
guys later.
thanks.
Okay.
Jeff. We've done it without you.